Hello and welcome to Commendable Commotion, where the creative arts intersect with the dark realms of true crime and parapolitics. Today you will hear my conversation with Tom Byron, a filmmaker and artist based in Kentucky. Tom's YouTube channel, Mystery Trail, is a nostalgic dive into the paranormal, inspired by classic horror shows of the 1990s, among other things. Mystery Trail also showcases some of Tom's excellent artwork and his exceptional costume design. I was hugely impressed by a video that Tom made a year ago about a place called Clack Mountain. Clack Mountain is a towering rock formation deep in the woods near Moorhead, a college town in eastern Kentucky. It's the sort of place that gives off a strange vibe even when you just look at it. It's rather like the eerie landscape of Joan Lindsay's novel Picnic at Hanging Rock, in which a group of school children go missing while visiting a colossal mountain in the countryside. Indeed, Clack Mountain has its own fair share of strange events, and with Halloween coming up, I thought it would be a good idea to make an episode about some of them. One story which keeps cropping up is that a group of Satanists performed bizarre rituals on the mountain for several years. You can find some of those stories in Tom Byron's video about the mountain, and on his blog, The Kentucky Files, which features a piece he wrote about the mountain, with many intriguing comments from locals. However, even more strange stories relating to Clack Mountain can be found by digging through newspaper archives from the eastern Kentucky region. I recently found a particularly chilling story while researching this episode. It was the murder of Donna Markwell and the subsequent death of her killer, Alexander Bowling. Now, please note that this story does contain mention of suicide, mental illness, and murder, so if you are particularly sensitive to any of those topics, then please skip ahead to around 6 minutes to just listen to my interview with Tom Byron. A few days before Halloween in 1980, local Moorhead, Kentucky resident Donna Markwell disappeared while buying candy for the upcoming holiday festivities. She never came home and her husband phoned the police. Markwell remained missing for the next 2 days, and then her lifeless body was found in the trunk of a car on Clack Mountain. 31-year-old Alexander Bowling was soon arrested, tried, and sentenced to death for murdering Donna Markwell. Bowling had a criminal history. A decade earlier, he'd been arrested in El Paso, Texas, for interstate auto theft, along with another individual who had previously been caught transporting drugs. While Bowling had once been a resident of California, by the beginning of the 1980s he had returned to his family's neck of the woods in Rowan County, Kentucky, home to Clack Mountain. Though Bowling's brutal crime had taken place in Rowan County, his trial was presided over by a judge who had been brought in from nearby Bath County. The judge who would usually preside over Rowan County cases was disqualified from Bowling's trial for reasons unknown. Less than 2 years after his conviction, Alexander Bowling was found dead in his jail cell. He had reportedly got into an argument with another inmate but was unharmed by the altercation, and he was then moved into a disciplinary area and locked into a new cell, alone. It was in that cell that a guard reportedly found Bowling dead less than 20 minutes later, with no visible signs of bodily harm. While authorities waited for the drug test results, Bowling's cause of death was reported as an apparent heart attack, even though the young man had no known history of a heart condition or any other serious physical ailment. However, when the drug test results finally came in a few weeks later, as was the normal time frame, officials revealed that Bowling had in fact died of a drug overdose. Despite the inmates being put under close scrutiny when taking prescribed drugs, a prison official was quoted in the Courier-Journal newspaper as saying, quote, "It appears that Bowling saved up the pills and took several all at once to get a high," unquote. The officer added that Bowling had, quote, "somehow managed to fake swallowing the capsules and to save them up," unquote. Strangely, a 2002 academic article about mental illness in prisons mentioned that Bowling actually died by hanging himself, but I've been unable to find any other source mentioning that. Alexander Bowling's lawyers later wrote to a local newspaper claiming that their client had been suicidal, having previously attempted to kill himself after his arrest. They wrote that the drug he had been prescribed was not one for high blood pressure, as had been reported, but was in fact an antidepressant. The lawyers described brutal conditions in the jail Bowling had been imprisoned in. They even claimed that items they had sent to Bowling were being kept from him during his imprisonment, along with other items like cassette tapes and magazines. As per Kentucky law, an appeal of Bowling's death sentence had been automatically guaranteed for him, but Bowling had requested that the appeal be dropped and that he simply die. All the same, his lawyers claimed that he had changed his mind and had talked excitedly to them a few days prior to his death, eagerly looking forward to the upcoming appeal of his sentence. Then, of course, he was found dead in his cell. Whatever the true nature of Alexander Bowling's demise in that solitary jail cell, he was clearly a disturbed and dangerous individual, and nothing could bring back Donna Markwell to her friends and loved ones in the area surrounding Clack Mountain. Thankfully, most of the other events that have taken place around the mountain have not been as tragic as what happened to Donna Markwell, but they certainly give the impression that the mountain attracts odd people and chilling events. So, with all that being said, now take a listen to Tom Byron talk about his experience visiting and filming Clack Mountain, and what he thinks about the decades-old tales of strangeness upon its rocky terrain. So, for people who aren't familiar, who are you and what do you do? Who is Tom Byron?
Tom Byron, I am a historian. I'm a filmmaker, an artist, and I'm like obsessed with history, the occult, the unexplained, and the uncanny. I'm an enthusiast of that.
The uncanny, yeah. So, in a psychological sense or in a horror specific sense?
Both.
Both. Good.
Yeah.
The so one of the things that I watched recently from you was a video you did and a blog post you did back in 2016, and then a video a few years later. Clack Mountain. Clack Mountain
Right.
in Kentucky. Now, whereabouts in Kentucky is this Clack Mountain?
It's in eastern Kentucky. It's basically, they call it the foothills of the Appalachian Mountain Range. It's sort of, uh, it's a real rocky, craggy area. Very mysterious.
So you made the blog post, which you tell the story briefly about sort of what you heard about the place. You had a bunch of people commenting, giving a lot of
Mm.
very, very strange stories. So how did you like, I mean, did you grow up hearing about this place? I mean, how'd you find out about it?
It's been a local legend as long as I can remember. It would have started out in the 1970s as people always said that at Clack Mountain there were witches. That they held black mass there, cast spells on people, cult activity. And by the 1980s, you have the Satanic Panic, and now all of a sudden it's devil worship that goes on there, and satanic cults. But I don't think I really ever was really up in that area. Uh, exactly at Clack Mountain until just a couple of years ago. I went there for the first time to kind of check it out. You don't hear the rumors of that type of activity as much as you used to. Nobody talks about it much anymore. But now growing up, that's all anybody talked about. It seemed like it was mostly just fear and speculation. Always thought. I didn't really put that much stock in it until I went up there. There's still a lot of graffiti, like the usual 666 and pictures of the devil on the rock walls that people painted. I don't know who it was that would do something like that, but it could be just like you say, kids, teenagers doing that sort of thing, trying to be part of the legend.
Yeah. So in terms of like, the speculation, that kind of thing, rumor, whatever fear that people had, did you ever hear any specific stories that people had? Because that might be substantial. Who knows? Did you ever hear any stories of someone who actually witnessed something weird there back in the day?
One thing that comes to mind is that there was a guy. There are people that live up in that area. There's a road that goes right through it.
Yeah.
Okay, so a guy is driving home from the Moorhead, which is the town that's there. So he drives up through the area of Clack Mountain where the rock formations are. Okay, it's dark. Uh, he's driving home. on the side of the road, he sees a female that appears to be probably in her late teens, early 20s, and she's walking up the road away from him in the same direction he's going, and she appears to be completely nude. He tries to talk to her from the window. He pulls up alongside of her. He says, "Miss, are you okay?" But she completely ignores him and keeps on walking until she finally disappears down a path in the woods. He just drives on, but he reported that story, and I think the police looked into it, and nothing ever came of it. Nobody knows why that happened, or there's been other instances like that I've heard, but that's the one that I know of that uh, it was documented. Now, recently, the last time I was up there, which would have been probably before, maybe around back in December, I believe, of last year. This was broad daylight. I've never been up there at night, not just because I don't have any really reason to go there, do an investigation. I would just go in the daytime. So what I saw was a goat that was loose, a small goat, a kid ran in front of me, ran in front of the car, and then ran off into the woods there. Now, granted, there's no houses or farms in that area of Clack Mountain. What was a goat doing loose all by itself out in the woods? Did it escape from somebody that was trying to sacrifice it? That's the first thought I had, which is, sacrificing goats or sheep is a common thing in paganism. And even in the Old Testament, the Hebrews used to sacrifice sheep. The Greeks would look at the entrails of a goat to tell fortunes and that sort of thing. Or perhaps in some cases, the gods required a sacrifice, and that's usually the type of animal that they would use. I just thought that it was really odd. I've never seen anything like that before. I've never seen a goat running around by itself loose in the woods my whole life, ever.
So, do you think there's any substance then to those rumors that you grew up hearing about the devil worship on Clack Mountain, or do you think that it's are you agnostic about it? What do you think?
I think that most legends have some basis in fact.
Yeah.
My theory on that is, if you're asking really honestly, is I believe that at one time, most likely there was cult activity in the area, maybe just paganism, Wiccans, witchcraft, that sort of thing. And maybe the local people in the area don't know the difference between paganism and satanic activity. Maybe they don't know the difference. They could have been, it started out in the 70s, could have been hippies that like naturalists, that type of thing. There's also reports that there was a nudist colony in the area. So over time, that could have morphed into the idea of Satanism. And maybe, legends build on themselves. Maybe there was some kids that wanted to be part of the legend, so they started painting graffiti in the area and started their own cult activity, their own sacrifices, just uh, to be self-styled Satanists or something. That was actually pretty common back in the 80s and 90s for people to do that kind of thing. Just they get a copy of the Satanic Bible or something, and they think that they have power now, and
See.
there's always the possibility that to me that's speculation, but
Yeah.
that seems like an honest possibility.
So, in terms of then, now you mentioned on that interesting blog that you wrote, the Kentucky Files. Was that the name of it?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You said something that you heard from reliable sources about the nudists and the naturalists. What reliable sources were they?
Um, I, I believe that there actually was a nudist colony that was at that site. As when you first go into Clack Mountain, there's a road that's closed off now. It's actually barred off, but there used to be a kind of like what would be the word, like a spa, like a health spa where you could go to, like they have saunas, uh, hot tub, and people could be nude without being bothered.
Did that place? How do you know that place existed? Did you see it? Did you read about? I mean,
I've just people talked about it, just reliable. Over the years, people talked about it, and friends of mine mentioned that it was there. There's no building or anything left there that I know of. That road's blocked off, so there's actually like a gate that blocks off to that area. It's private property, I do believe. Um, there used to be tunnels in the area, railroad tunnels that are blocked off, and that area supplied ore to the railroad there used to be like a steel industry there in that same area, which is all gone now. So the area has quite a bit of history before that.
yeah,
Uh, yeah.
interesting.
So
So, have you delved into the history of this place then, presumably as part of your research?
I mean, a little bit. A lot of it goes back to the 1800s as far as like the steel industry in that area. There used to be a lot of industry in this region that isn't anymore. This was a booming area at one time, not now, because there's a lot of coal, a lot of steel, a lot of ore, and things like that. There's a gravel pit near Clack Mountain, a rock quarry, and rock quarries are known to be places where cults would gather to have rituals and that type of thing. And I've heard that there was rituals around where the rock quarry was, and possible satanic activity at that one also. I've been to that rock quarry too, and I think one of them still active, one of them isn't. But uh, the Clack Mountain, the formations that are there are all natural. They kind of resemble Stonehenge in a way, like a gigantic version of that, large monolithic rocks. But the thing is, they're all natural, and they were created probably by glacial movement in the Ice Age, and because they're part of the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful place, the Appalachian region. So I was there in last summer. I wasn't in Kentucky, but I was in West Virginia, and it is a beautiful place. And from the video you did on Clack Mountain, you can see that as well. So, in terms of like, the was there anything sort of more, let's say, documented in newspapers or anything like that? Like any weird incidents or any tragic incidents? I know some commenters on your blog mentioned about maybe one or two rather disturbing crimes that may have happened there in the 80s or 90s. Do you ever read or hear anything about that?
I can't think of anything offhand like that. I'm not really. I've not updated that blog in a long time. Or people still comment to this day. Will make comments on there, mostly from people that live in the region, and they would know more about it than I would. So if you go to the blog and look at the comment section, you can learn all you want about it. Yeah.
So, in terms of then, when you visited Clack Mountain, for example, in your video and other times since, apart from that goat that you found, anything else weird happen, or is that the main
Oh
thing?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Sort of
When I
things.
first went there, I didn't expect to see anything or encounter anything. When I first went there, I became incredibly ill afterwards. Now, I could have just been coming down with something that was a coincidence, but the thing is I slept for almost 48 hours after I got back from there, after doing my filming there, and I was too ill to do any kind of writings about it. I took pictures, so it was a couple of weeks before I actually even did it, I even uploaded the piece. But what was weird is I recovered. I thought about it at the time that old it's basically a Gnostic concept that if you try to do anything on the devil, any kind of piece, a documentary, anything at all, he will stop you or try to stop you, anything in his power, because the devil is a trickster, and he doesn't want to be exposed for the liar and trickster that he is. So I thought at the time, is it a curse? Like a lot of times weird things will come up, if I'm doing something that kind of does involve the occult.
So it sounds then like, so you've an interest in the history of religions, you have an interest in history of all sorts of things. Do you yourself believe in these very dark religious ideas in relation to the devil, in relation to some elements of the supernatural, Satan, that kind of thing, whatever you want to call him? What uh, sort of what religion would you identify with, or do you not identify with any religion? Are you agnostic? That'd be interesting.
I'm Christian,
Christian,
and
right?
yeah, I always have identified as Christian, but for most of my life, I didn't go to church regularly. Now I am. I'm going to regular Bible studies. I went last night to one, and I attend church regularly now. So I'm more of the religious bent. I used to kind of like scoff at the occult and uh, ghost stories to some extent, uh, occult curses, poltergeist, that sort of thing. I never did really. I mean, I knew it's there's some truth to it, but I never did really take it really super seriously. I never did really worry about things like that. And now these days, I'm more of the idea of you have to watch what you do and say because you could actually curse yourself. I do believe that. I do believe that people can be demonically oppressed. I do believe that, in guardian angels. And if there's guardian angels, there's also, like archangels, evil. Not in every case, but there is always the possibility of it's something you have to look into.
Right. Okay. It's interesting. So, because in terms of things like, the what they call the satanic panic of the 80s, you mentioned earlier, which was when some of these Clack Mountain rumors were going around. The sad thing about the satanic panic, in my view, from reading a bit about that time, was that a lot of it was hysteria, but there were some very dark things that did happen. A few non-widespread cases of people engaging in sort of Satanism in some cases, not all cases. There was some sensationalism. There was a lot of hype. There was a lot of tabloid sort of, media hype. Unfortunately, maybe that clouded a few isolated, very weird, very sad,
Sure. Oh yeah.
tragic
Oh yeah.
cases. What are your thoughts on that time?
Probably at the time, I was, a teenager too, probably. I mean, like then. So I probably just laughed it off. I probably thought it was cool. You know, I never was one of these people that went and like, was into Satanism, but I studied the occult. Uh, I'm sure that I still have a copy of the Satanic Bible somewhere. But I always scoff at that type of thing. It's just, humanistic, uh, like new age type religion material. And I probably thought it was funny at the time. We probably got a big kick out of it, about people having, black candles or wearing black clothes, that type of thing. We probably just laughed at that kind of thing. Uh, Anytime there was a documentary on it, I'm sure I watched it. Any kind of special like Geraldo and 2020 all did segments on Satanism and how it's taken over our youth in the country. That, if only we had, problems like that now. That seems minuscule compared to the problems in the world these days and in America. But at the time, people took it very seriously. And the older generations really thought that somebody's going to try to sacrifice their cat or dog or something. But I never really took it that seriously, but I thought it was interesting. I definitely thought it was worth looking into. Now, since then, I've done like a lot of research and I've published papers, documentaries, blogs that just even mention uh, cult activity, the occult, the unexplained. And I've been warned by a lot of people, usually they were older people, to not do anything on the occult. Just really watch what you do and say. And because you can find yourself in uh, really bad shape, you can find yourself under spiritual attack. So I do believe there is the possibility of spiritual attack. I believe that is true. So these days I try not to I try to balance it out. I'm still interested in the diabolical and yes, horror movies have always fascinated me, things like that. But I think that these days I'm more inclined to balance it out with clean living, living a righteous life, uh, being aware that that we have in our lives a guiding light that pulls us along in the right direction. Because if you get desensitized to uh, all the horrible things that go on in the world, all the kinds of horrible things that you can encounter, that could cloud your mind, I believe.
Yeah.
So you just have to pay attention. If somebody does tell you, if they are a person that's knowledgeable and a person higher in spirituality than you are, and they warn you to watch what you're doing, like if you're doing a documentary on something that's kind of has a dark theme to it, or just watch what you do. Got to be very careful.
So, I mean, on that note, like that dark sort of feeling that some people describe, that some people view as maybe like could be a residue of very bad and evil things that have happened somewhere. Some people seem to imply on your blog that that might be happening at Clack Mountain. There's a residue, just a bad feeling. They can't put their finger,
Mm,
that kind of thing. And I'm just
I
wondering, like,
believe that. I believe, yes, I believe that.
yeah, I mean, it sounds like you mentioned in, I think it was your video that and in your blog that you felt that, or no, so I think readers of your blog anyway mentioned that they experienced that quite a bit. I'm wondering just what causes that about particular places. Is it subjective?
That I don't know, but now just to use my own experience, I've only been there maybe 3 times within the past few years. The first time I go, I come back up gravely ill and sleep for about 48 hours, maybe longer, just conked out and had to sleep it off. The second time I did, when I did the video, my camera stopped working. It malfunctioned permanently. But I said, you know what? I'm determined to do this. I drove all the way up here. I'm going to do a video on this, and that's all there is to it. So I drove to Walmart and bought a replacement camera and went back and filmed the segment. The third time I go up there, I see the loose goat. That was just that's just so weird. So there's something to it. There is something to it. It's the same thing like I was mentioning before, as far as like spirituality. All these people that are on reality shows or on YouTube doing paranormal investigations, there's always the possibility that they're opening themselves up to spiritual attack. A lot of them will even mention it. If you try to do recordings of spirit voices using was the voice box and EVPs, things like that,
Oh, yeah. Mm.
uh, you could. There are people that have been demonically possessed when they go out and do uh, paranormal investigations. People think it's fun and interesting and all exciting to go out and do that type of thing. But if you think about it, if you lived in a haunted house that really, really was haunted or something like that, a poltergeist, if you lived in a house where there was a person that was demonically possessed, it isn't fun.
No. Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. It's so I mean, because I mean, when people describe things like that, like I know it can be more of an experiential thing. These look some of the feelings that people get on this mountain in Kentucky. But at the same time, then you have a lot of people then saying, "Well, I've lived there for ages, nothing weird whatsoever, very happy
mm,
childhood there, etc., happy life." Then there are
mm,
some people, almost, I don't know, maybe the same number of people, maybe a few less, I don't know. But some people saying, oh, yeah, no, I remember my granddad told me about the satanic cult on Clack Mountain. I'm just wondering, like, I mean, that would imply to me maybe that, okay, well, there might be a kernel of truth to this idea if you have multiple people saying the same thing. So from a historian's perspective, that's quite interesting. Once you have that corroboration to some degree. Have you talked to anyone who has described hearing stories like that? Would you care to elaborate on any of those stories that
Not in a
friends?
long time. Like I said, when I was in high school, that's all anybody talked about. It was a people used to go devil worship hunting. They would try to go up there in 4-wheel drives or whatever and go see if they could find and witness occult activity. I never did do that, but I heard about people doing it. I don't know if they ever found anything or not, but I remember them very, very specifically. That's what they were going to go do.
And presumably, did they find anything?
Not that I can ever remember. You know,
And so, in terms of
legend tripping is what they were doing.
yeah, yeah, legend tripping. I've never heard that one before. That's a good one. So, in terms of then, like, what exactly? So, actually, I'll pause this for a second because I'm going to go back onto your blog before I ask this question because I remember there was a very interesting thing
Mhm.
that I read in one of the comments. One second. Kentucky Files, Clack Mountain. Was there a restaurant near the area called the Eagle's Nest Restaurant?
That's in Moorhead. That's in downtown Moorhead.
Did you hear the story someone wrote in your blog that there was someone who worked?
Not that they did they work there or something? I can't remember. That's been a long. The Eagles Nest. That's been a long time ago. I ate there when I was a child, so that would have been like 30 something years ago,
Because
35, 40 years ago.
someone on your blog wrote in the comments that someone who worked there was found dead on Clack Mountain. Uh,
Oh, okay. Ooh,
yeah, did you
I
ever?
didn't know that.
No, okay.
I've not read those comments in a long time. My blog's been defunct since 2016 or 17, maybe. I've not updated it. Occasionally, I'll go on there and somebody will leave like an anonymous uh, uh, post on there because it's open. Anybody wants to post on their
Yeah,
comments, they're allowed to do so.
yeah,
So I'll check it out every now and again. I don't respond to it much anymore.
yeah. You see, on that note, so you're a filmmaker, and I'm just wondering, like, what exactly, before we talk a little about a film that you're very kindly helping me with, how has the supernatural influenced your films, your blogs, that kind of thing? It sounds like it's always been something you're interested in as a theme.
Yes, yes. Well, as far as I can remember back, I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. My mom took me to a fair, like it was a circus, and outside of the circus, they had a trailer, a pull behind trailer. That on the outside of it, it had two speakers on it. There was like a recording of a man that had a sign on it that said that inside you could see the Minnesota Iceman frozen in a block of ice, and you could go see it. But I was too scared to go see it. I wouldn't go. My mom offered to give me a ticket to go see it. My sister and her friend, my sister was older than me. She's 6 years older. She wasn't scared, so she went in to look at it. And she told me later on it looked like a Neanderthal. She said it looked like a prop. It didn't look real to her.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's what they said it was, but I was still scared about it. But the thing is that I was all of a sudden hooked on the macabre after that. I was just hooked on it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So from then on, I thought about Bigfoot, and I started watching documentaries and movies at the time, like The Legend of Sasquatch, things like that. I became very interested in it, and that led to an interest in ghosts and the paranormal, UFOs, that sort of thing. And my mom had a stash of UFO books that she put away. That was called Flying Saucer Review, I think, like from the 1960s,
Yeah.
early 70s. I started looking at those, and what kid back then wasn't interested in Bigfoot? But I
Yeah.
realized that to this day that I missed a big opportunity to see the Minnesota Iceman, which is a legend now. and people speculate whether it was real or not. And I'm assuming that it was, but that's the last. I'll never get that chance back. That'll never happen ever again. It's just gone. But so I developed this interest in the supernatural, the paranormal, that type of thing. And there was a TV show with Leonard Nimoy called In Search of,
Ah,
and
yeah,
I was really into that. All my friends were into it.
very good
But
show.
as you get into the 80s and 90s, they stopped making shows like that. They didn't really make a whole lot like that. So I started talking to some of my friends and some other people. Look, we've got these video cameras now that are, camcorders. Why don't we do a show kind of like In Search of? Why don't we start, you know, we had the internet was in its infancy in 95, 96 ish. And there were, it was hard to get your paranormal fix back then. There wasn't that many shows on cable. There might have been a few, uh, like the X Files started to fulfill that need for people, but there wasn't a whole lot out there. So we were trying to fulfill a need. Like I wanted to see something like this. I wanted to go out into the woods or some place and investigate some kind of strange phenomenon. We wanted to have that experience. Now these days, you go to YouTube, you go to reality television, everybody's doing it. But back then, we were running around in the woods with cameras and night vision equipment and recording sound, recording otherworldly sounds. These days, everybody's doing it. So it's not, it doesn't have the kitsch value these days that it did back then. It didn't have the impact.
Yeah,
So
precisely.
it was really exciting experience. These days, it's not that big a deal because just so many people are doing it. So you can go on YouTube and there's channel after channel after channel of paranormal activity type, material.
And so in terms of like, the the what do you call it, the 90s, were there not paranormal kind of shows or mystery shows at least, with sometimes the paranormal in them, maybe like Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack? No, remember, did you
Yeah,
like that?
yeah,
Yeah,
but now a lot of times those they were just investigating crimes. Every
true.
now and again they would do UFOs or disappearances and that type
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah,
They sure did. There was a show called Sightings. They had that, and that was always interesting. We never missed an episode of that, but it just wasn't as rampant as these days. There
yeah.
was Art Bell,
Uh-huh.
the Art Bell show. That was like if you back in the '90s, if you had anything at all to offer on the paranormal, the occult, conspiracies, you had to go through Art Bell to do it.
Yeah. The what was it, Coast to Coast
Coast
AM?
to coast,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I
That
remember
he was
when
the
our
man.
yeah, well, yeah,
We would talk about that all night long, me and my friends sometimes after watching it. We go
yeah,
on and on and discuss it. Good
yeah.
time.
Absolutely. I remember when Art Bell died. That was very sad. Even though he's not necessarily a household name for everyone, he's a household name for people who are interested in the mysterious, the dark, the weird, the unexplained, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, no, that's yeah, good times. I don't remember the 90s, but certainly I existed then. So I have a weird sort of nostalgia for it. Do you sort of have a nostalgia? It sounds like you do for that era.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah,
It probably sucked back then, really, but at the same time, there was, like the technology these days we have is just fantastic. It's wonderful. It's good to be able like what we're doing right now. That wouldn't have been possible back then. Uh, if it was, it would have been like webcams that were like, where the person's like dropping frames and like
yeah,
that. But it really because I saw some video back then, it's all pixelated and everything like that. You know, the thing is we have all this great technology, but now we've lost something in that, in that uh the 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 excitement of material is gone. Like, back then everybody was listening to Art Bell. You know, everybody was watching the X Files. And you would get together the next day and talk about it.
yeah,
We don't do that anymore because the internet is oversaturated. with material of all kinds. There's so much stuff out there that everybody's just sick of all of it. Back then, it was exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Do you not think with things like, the when a new popular show like maybe Stranger Things, comes out on Netflix, even though it's streaming, it's not like, cable television or the cinema or whatever. There's quite a bit of chatter then, including in person, not just online. Do you find that with some shows, or do you think it's all just oversaturated? I mean,
I think it's oversaturated no matter what. Things don't last as long as they used to. Um, because like I said, back in the 70s, they had Leonard Nimoy's In Search of, and then
yeah.
they took it off. It was canceled. But we talked about that show for years, up into the 90s, probably up to the year 2000. Me and my friends would talk about. I remember this certain episode when I was a kid, and it scared the hell out of me. And I've thought about it ever since. You know, like used to watch shows that were about like the Curse of King Tut, haunted castles, haunted mansions. We would talk about that stuff and speculate on it and go on and on about it. Those kind of conversations don't really happen that much anymore. I just don't really, people don't think about it. People are just interested in their day to day lives. Uh, you can't recapture something it's almost impossible to recapture that these days. Just like when the movie The Exorcist came out, people talked about that for decades. But you can't make a movie that's going to be as good as The Exorcist. They've tried to make sequels, they've tried to make remakes about, you can't, you cannot recapture the impact that it had when it came out, and it's just that way these days. We have the technology now to do whatever we need to do, but there's just so much material out there that it gets buried in the greater ocean of all the material that's out there. And I'm guilty of it too. I have my own YouTube channel, and I upload. I have two or three channels probably, and I'm always uploading material to it. And I'll get views. People will watch it, but is it something that's like a household name? Is it something that people will think about years from now? I don't know. You have access to it, but is it something that people are obsessed about? I don't think so.
I see. So, in relation to then the paranormal and all that weird stuff, I myself am nearly finished a documentary about a film crew that went to the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1997, a couple of years after you and your friend Cecil Lawson visited it for a documentary that you guys did about the
Mhm.
legend of the Mothman. That's a story that's always interested you. You mentioned earlier. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What
Yeah.
what drew you to it? What made you think, you're gonna look into it?
Okay, that goes back to my childhood again. On a trip to West Virginia one time, my parents, I was in the back seat of the car, and we went over. It wasn't the Silver Bridge, it wasn't Point Pleasant, but it was West Virginia. I think it's probably along the Ohio River in that region, and they started talking about the Mothman and the Silver Bridge collapse. It reminded them of them that they read that book years before. They had a copy of it. They didn't at the time, but they remembered talking about it. I said, "What are you talking about? What's this Mothman and this?" They called it the bird, the great bird creature that lived at the TNT plant in Point Pleasant. So I was very intrigued by that, and so I thought about it for years. There wasn't much material on it back then, and years later, it would have been probably the early '90s. Uh, they reissued the Mothman prophecies. It wasn't available for a long time. They came up with a new John Keel's Mothman prophecies, and I ordered it probably through Fate magazine or something like that. I got a copy of it as soon as they reissued it, and I read it and went wild over it. And I passed it around to some of my friends. Cecil Lawson, he was always involved in the type of investigations and things we're doing at the time. He read it, and we both came to the conclusion we need to do a piece on this. And I said, let's, we've got this technology. I've got a new camcorder. I was really getting into filmmaking and wanting to do a documentary. So on one hand, we're wanting to do a documentary or a film of some type. came out with the concept that we should do something, local, fairly local. And we're not really that far from Point Pleasant. So that's another thing. It kind of goes along with the Appalachian region type material legend tripping that we were interested in because we had been doing some local investigations anyway. Haunted churches, vanishing hitchhiker type things like that. We were already, really into that. So I saw the documentary about Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now, Hearts
Yeah.
of Darkness.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the filmmaking process and how interesting that was. Just the idea that you could push yourself to the limits of creativity and accomplish something that people said was impossible to do. Because everybody at the time told me you can't make a movie for under $1,000. You can't use a home video camcorder to make a show. You can't, you can't, you can't. I said, well, you can. I'll show you. So on one hand, we got this timeline of wanting to make a film, and over here we're doing paranormal investigations. So I said, let's combine these. And I said to Cecil one time, we were riding around at night, and that's back when gas was cheap. You could just ride around all night long. At one point, I said, why don't we go to Point Pleasant to shoot some footage of the TNT plant and sell it online or like on in feet. We weren't actually using the internet yet. I know that sounds weird, but you're talking about 1995. I said, what about Fate Magazine, Strange Magazine? We'll put an ad in the back of it and we'll just sell the footage. But after we went there, it soon turned into a larger project. I said, we can't just get by with selling some footage. I don't think anybody's going to want that because most people didn't know what Mothman was back then. I said, let's just do a documentary just do a whole reenactment of it, at least a half-hour show. And that's what we did.
Well, it's entertaining. I saw it, and you can find bits of it on your YouTube channel. What's the name of your YouTube channel, actually, for those unfamiliar?
Mystery Trail.
Perfect. Yeah. So it's good 90s nostalgia. I certainly thought when I watched it, and it seems so. I mean, like the crew that my project is about went there 2 years after you. They were a crew who many of them worked on a very popular 90s video game called Earthworm Jim.
Okay.
And that was made into a children's cartoon. People grew up with that. They went to this town to make a fictional film about the Mothman, a bit like you did, and the film was never released. My upcoming documentary, which you're very kindly helping me with, will, sort of tell the story about the making of that film that they were making and their experiences in the town of Point Pleasant. And their experiences were bizarre, utterly bizarre, completely bizarre. I don't know if I've told you about this before, actually, Tom, about the stuff that happened to them.
You weren't specific about it.
Yeah, exactly. You'll see, and I look forward to showing you. And I'm very grateful for your help. And certainly, it really opens up an entirely new perspective of this very quite famous town that's become a tourist destination for many people. It's become famous because of the Mothman legend, and this documentary that I'm making will unveil a completely new perspective of the town. So it's very exciting. And on that note, so your YouTube channel, Mystery Trail, your blog is the Kentucky Files.
Correct.
Perfect. Where else can people find you? Do you have an art page? Is that right?
Right. My current project is I'm doing cryptozoology art, and it's called TL Byron Cryptid Art. And
Perfect.
I'm doing I'm doing all kinds of legends of North America: the Jersey Devil, Mothman, the Flatwoods Monster, the Dover Demon. So anything that's in Mexico, the United States, and Canada, I'm going to do a piece on it. A lot of the classic cases
Cool.
of
Brilliant.
cryptozoology.
Yeah.
For a long time, I've not done a whole lot on cryptozoology, but I decided now is the time to get back into it. I've got interested in that again. So I decided to do it's all paintings, full color paintings of a lot of the different cryptid sightings.
Wonderful. Very exciting, very good, very creative. And on that note, any creepy anecdotes you'd like to leave us with before we finish this commendable commotion episode? Anything weird happened to you, while painting a leprechaun, or while painting a ghost? I don't know. I mean, or has it all been smooth going?
I've not had any real weird experiences recently that much, thankfully.
Yeah,
I don't want weird things to happen. The older I get, I don't want weird stuff to happen. And, I don't
yeah.
want to really, it's probably been a while since I've seen any ghosts or UFOs or anything like that. So I've seen a lot of strange things over the years, but I could write books and books and books about all this strange stuff that, I grew up in a haunted house. We can go on and on about the Men in Black experiences, all of that. But, you'd have to be, if you look at my blog and some of my, if you go on Mystery Trail, I discuss some of the strange things that happen in my neighborhood where I currently live, all the weird happenings there. If you go on all those sites, you'll get all the info on it. Because I couldn't, it's really hard to encapsulate all that in one interview.
Yeah, well, I
But
did.
the region that I live in anyway is the border of West Virginia and Kentucky, Ohio Valley, all those areas are. It's just it's hard to grow up in this area and not be interested in the paranormal, the unexplained. You're going to grow up with it to some extent. You have all these Civil War battles that took place here. You have all of the like Kentucky and West Virginia have all kinds of UFO portals, and you have vanishing hitchhiker stories. There's always a haunted house, an abandoned place that has something, a legend growing up around it. I've heard all kinds of weird things about every corner of the area, and West Virginia is more like West Virginia. You've got the Mothman, you've got the Flatwoods Monster. There's all kinds of UFO windows in that area. It's kind of like it's more like a sci-fi movie there. Whereas Kentucky, you've got your vanishing hitchhikers, white lady apparitions. That's a common theme. Haunted cemeteries. You've got like the coal mines have kobold legends surrounding it. You've got more of kind of a Lord of the Rings kind of movie going on in Kentucky. That type of thing.
Well, I'd encourage people to go on to Mystery Trail and the Kentucky Files and your cryptozoology art page. What's it called again? The cryptozoology one?
T.L. Byron cryptid art.
Perfect. I'd encourage people to go there and, hear about your
I'll send you a link.
experience.
Yeah, so you can link all that.
Yeah, and for people to hear about your experiences on your YouTube channel and your blog, I'd encourage people to go there to listen to your amazing stories as well. I really
Well,
would.
my current project is I'm doing a field guide to monster sightings.
Okay.
Uh,
Very good.
so that will be available. Well, I'm gonna try to get it done. I'd like to have it done before Halloween this year, but that's just sort of a deadline for it. But
That'd be
that's
a
the
good
current
point.
project.
Yeah, that'd be a good point to hopefully put it on the market, that kind of thing by Halloween. Well,
Hmm.
thank you very much indeed, Tom. And certainly, as you mentioned, with the West Virginia and the Kentucky area, a lot of weird stuff, weird stories. This documentary I'm coming out with, I'm so grateful for your help with it. It will show completely new perspective of this famous Point Pleasant town, one that no one has encountered before publicly, and it'll be quite chilling stuff. And so,
Mm,
very much, and you have a great afternoon.
thanks. It's been great.
Perfect. That is brilliant, and I will cut that in then as a commendable commotion. That's going to be brilliant.
Oh,
Thank you.
great.
Very interesting. Very
When are you
interesting.
going to premiere? When are you going to premiere this episode?
I know that I probably will put this one. I think there are two coming out before this one.
Okay.
And then I'll put your one there. So that'll be very exciting. And So it'll be a bit of time, but bear with me, and I look forward to putting it out. It'll be very, very, people will love hearing a local's perspective of Clack Mountain and about your filmmaking as well, obviously. So
I'll
thank
send you links. I'm going to send you links to everything that you can put in the description, and people can click on it if they want, whatever.
Perfect. Did
So,
you have people written to you about Clack Mountain, like with their stories? Do you have emails from them about Clack Mountain or anything like that?
Matthew, all I get is notifications from my Google blog that somebody's posted on there. Sometimes I look at them, sometimes I don't. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're interested in Clack Mountain. I'm always kind of people that I'll do a piece on something, then I'll just move on to something else. I've not thought about Clack Mountain since we probably last talked about it. Other than the fact that I went up there one day. I wasn't doing an investigation when I saw the goat. For some reason, I just felt compelled to drive up there. I don't know why, but I did. And I drove up through there, and I didn't get out, but I drove up there and I saw that goat crossing the road. So I was like,
Yeah.
that just adds to the legend to me. I
Yeah,
promptly left after that.
I
Yeah.
see. That is interesting. And
Yeah,
so,
right now I'm just doing artwork, and I bounce from thing to thing. I just the thing is that, like we talked about, like the internet is so oversaturated these days with material and videos, websites. I decided that the next thing that I needed to do was physical media. I need to have an actual physical book or something that I could actually take to uh, these trade shows and sell, and at least just get out and meet people. Shake hands with people, palm press, and be able to be well known through that, person to person. It's just so difficult to get famous and get recognition just by using the internet alone these days. You
yeah,
really have to go to all the trade shows. You have to go to all of the seminars and meetings. Like all those people that are involved in the paranormal investigation, they're meetups all over the country that they go to. They go to all of them. I don't,
yeah.
and but I probably should at
The
some point.
Oh, you haven't been to them, have you?
I don't. Well, you've got what's called the Scare Fest, which is a horror related thing. You've got your Comic Cons, which is like sci-fi and comic related uh, meetups that they have.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of there's Bigfoot community meetups that they have all the time. To me, a lot of those things are ridiculous. But
Yeah.
now there are a lot of the top investigators go to those. A lot of people, they make their living doing that. I don't, but I am interested in being involved in the community of the paranormal, science fiction, and basically having creative material in that
Exactly.
genre. To just basically just to stay relevant. Because a
Exactly.
lot of times I'll go online and I'll try to contact somebody about something, and like you try to friend somebody on Facebook and they just ignore you
Yeah.
because they don't know who you are. And other people, that's all that they do. All they do all day long is investigate Bigfoot or cryptid sightings, or they do this and they do that. It's a small, very tight knit community, and if they don't know you, they don't know you.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a challenge, definitely, and one that it sounds like putting your
Like if I
face
put
out
something
there
out there,
works.
I don't know if you've experienced this or not. Since you're a content creator too.
Yeah.
I'll put something out there, and people they'll like it, they'll watch it, maybe they'll comment on it, and then they just forget about it. 2 weeks later, they're on to something else.
That happens. Yeah. That's certainly with
Okay,
the
so
internet, like you were saying,
right,
it does happen. Yeah,
that's
certainly
the
can be.
dilemma that we have these days. Like I
Yeah.
said, when me and my friends, when we were kids, we watched whatever show was on TV at the time, and we never forgot it. We think about it for years later. These days, people just forget about stuff.
Yeah, I think putting your face out there is a very good thing to do because that does make an effort and that can pay off. And so I think certainly that's a big part of it. But yeah, certainly with the internet, like it is a thing, a limit that can happen is that people do just move on quickly to something else. I know what you mean.
Yep.
The Mothman documentary that you made, did you find any sort of raw footage? Like, you very kindly, I'm using obviously bits footage from the documentary itself, which you very kindly gave me. Did you find any other footage? No.
Not that I know of. The thing is there's two different cuts of the Mothman that are actually that still exist. Okay, now there's the original work cut, the work print that you have a copy of that you download that I digitized. Okay,
Yeah.
now there's also the 2002 recut after the Richard Gere movie came out, which is slightly different from that. It has music on it, and it has more sound effects, and there's some extra footage of me and Cecil preparing to go up there, and some more night vision footage in it. I think that isn't in the it wasn't in the original work print because it was just kind of behind the scenes stuff. That's about all. It's slightly different cut. Eventually, here's my plans for that is what I plan to do is I'm going to digitize all of the first generation footage of the TNT plant. All this, just I got another tape that has just all of that footage on there, uncut, raw footage. And I'm going to go
Oh,
see when you're dealing with videotape, you want to have the first generation because it degrades every time you dub it off. You understand that, though?
yeah.
Analog is not the same as digital. You're not getting a copy of a copy. You're getting a degraded, poorer quality copy each generation that you dub it off. It loses pixels. So I'm gonna go back to the original source material as quickly as possible. The work print is the closest thing. That's the most high resolution piece of material that I have that's completely cut together. Okay.
Yeah.
Now the 2002 recut was done on computer.
Yeah.
It was done on non-linear editing that was available back at the time. And I updated the titles in some cases, and some of I kind of cleaned the audio up a little bit maybe in some places. Okay, because I had more control over. The thing about the original cut was it was all done analog, tape to tape. I had a VCR here and a VCR here, and you just stop it. It would take weeks, and you'd stop and then roll it up again, record a little bit more as I went along. You only had one shot at it, really, because there's no DVDs back then to put it on.
And you
There's
did that for
no
the editing process. Is that what you did it in?
right. You whatever like you have your original videotape, and then you've got your all the material that you're editing is on this other tape. So in the end, you've got a master VHS tape. That's all you have to go on. Once you have that, you couldn't screw it up. If you screwed it up, you're done. You got to re-edit it again. You're going to lose it. You're going to lose quality if you keep trying to do that. So from then on, all of the tapes that you make come off that original. So you've got a bay of VCRs that are recording, and you sell those, just as you make them.
I
Uh,
see. And
there
so,
was a D. There was in the early 2000s. There was a DVD available for a while that I distributed, but I really was never happy with the 2002 recut. Completely happy with it. So what I'm going to do is eventually combine the two because I can do any kind of editing I want now with no problem. I'll combine the two, and then, but I don't know how I'm going to redistribute it because people don't buy DVDs that much anymore. I could burn a DVD, but would I really sell any? And if I upload it to YouTube, it's just going to be free. You know,
yeah.
I
So,
made my money. I probably made about $5,000 off of it probably over the years. I
uh,
made my money.
what's that?
I spent $1,000 to make the movie, and I probably made 5,000 total. So I made a $4,000 profit. You
It's a good bit of money. It's a good bit of money.
know. But that's long gone.
The the
Yeah.
um the raw footage, as in the raw footage, as it were, of, like, just uncut footage showing the town or the TNT area, not as part of a cut of the documentary. So have you digitized anything like that yet? No?
No, but most of what you see is available in the work print. We used about everything.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well,
The,
thank
the
you.
reason that I want to digitize all of that is because I want to go back to the original source material for my new recut.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which I'm not. I don't have any plans to do that right now, but
Yeah.
eventually in the future,
Cool.
I'll make
I
it available.
see. Well, it's very creative stuff. So thank you very much indeed.
Mm.
And a great episode this is going to be. And I'm looking forward to showing you a basically final cut of the Mothman documentary. As I said, it's the whole thing of getting like copyright clearances from every, making sure that everything, like if you
Right.
have footage of a video game in it, making sure the makers or whoever owns the rights to the video game isn't going to come after you afterwards, kind of thing. Do you have any advice on that? Because I hope it doesn't take too long, because that's the one thing really, the big thing at the moment that I'm just trying to work through before putting it out there. Hopefully at the Moth
Well,
Festival.
what we used to do back in the day, we actually had a physical piece of paper that had a video, like a release, a consent release that people would sign to use their interviews or whatever for.
Yeah, most of them, I think it's fine. It's more kind of things like I don't think that's the problem. It's more things like if there's footage of like a video game, because they made
Oh,
video games, the people who made that
yeah.
film. So it kind of shows the video game and the rights are owned, I think, now by a big company like EA Games or something. So I'm just kind of wondering how to. I know that if you
They
just
might like the publicity too. You don't know.
true.
It's hard to find out.
Yeah,
If you get really deep into it, a lot of times what you have to do is you have to hire like an entertainment industry lawyer,
yeah.
which would be expensive, like a Hollywood lawyer. Uh,
Mm,
we actually looked into that one time. But I tell you what I do to get around that, Matthew, is that like when I go to YouTube, when I upload video, anything, I, I make sure the majority of everything that I post is something that I created myself. I
yeah.
make my own artwork. I shoot all my own footage. I don't use anybody else's stock footage hardly. And I certainly don't use anybody else's music, especially if you intend to make money off of it. If you're just uploading something just for fun, if it's not monetized, I don't think anybody cares. But I try to use all my own material. If I need music for something, not like uh, YouTube's full of royalty-free music and footage and things that you can download that are royalty-free.
Yeah, I
So you
think you can
can,
only use them. Am I right in saying if you want to make money with my documentary, for example, if you want to make money with it, because my documentary, like I'm gonna try entering it into film festivals, that kind of thing.
right,
So
right,
that
right,
kind of probably would count as for profit because if it gets picked up by a distributor, hopefully,
right,
kind of thing.
right, right.
So I think for that YouTube royalty free music, I'm pretty sure that doesn't actually include for profit productions or whatever you want to call it,
Uh,
commercial use.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Is what
Oh,
usually I've used some of that stuff myself. What it is that you want to cite that person as a contributor. As
right.
long as in their credits that you credit them, if you give them a credit, they don't care. They'll say on their uh, on their channel, this is free to use as long as you give me credit for it, and I always do that.
Yeah.
And I'll set a link. I'll even go as far as put a link to their content. Like there's one person that does kind of horror and ambient like creepy music.
Yeah.
He's called Quite Bat, and he says on there you're free to use my music that I produce. Just give me a credit, and
And
all of his content says that. So I always give him a credit on all of my if I use it.
does that person does that include for commercial projects?
Yeah, oh yeah. As long as
Okay.
you give him a credit,
What's his name?
Quite Bat,
Okay, I'll check it
Quite
out.
Bat. Uh-huh.
White
It's
Bat.
good music. It's pretty
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
I'll check it out because that's the sort of stuff I'm looking for. That's brilliant. So so just to confirm, you're okay with me, you know, using your footage of Point Pleasant and, from your documentary, you're okay with me using stuff like that throughout my documentary and, inserting a little bit at the beginning about like, when you went to Point Pleasant with Cecil, even though my documentary is a commercial for-profit documentary.
Yes, it's fine. Yes, yes,
Okay, perfect.
absolutely. You have my
Okay.
permission.
Thank you. That's
All
very
I'm looking for is just a little bit of publicity on it. Because
yeah.
here's the thing, Matthew, is like when we made this documentary, we did make it, we made it for profit, but we thought that we would get famous and get recognition. And then if they ever did anything on the Mothman in the future, that they would always come back to us and ask us questions about it. And nobody ever did.
I don't
Uh,
understand. Yeah.
but Yeah, when they promoted the Richard Gere movie, they never contacted us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I've been contacted by a few people over the years, but it wasn't anything concrete. It wasn't anything that helped that publicized us in any way. We didn't get any notoriety out of it hardly at all, even though we were great pioneers of what we did. See, back then nobody was doing what we were doing.
yeah,
Nobody was doing this kind of thing. Now everybody's making a movie or has a channel. And anybody
exactly.
that has a phone, you don't even need a camera anymore, just a phone, and you can do whatever you want. Like, oh, I'm making a movie.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, that's what I did in Point Pleasant. I used my iPhone 13 and a microphone with a windshield, and it turned out pretty well. So, it's pretty good. I'll show you a uh when it's nearly ready. I'll show you a private link to it, and like a private Vimeo link or something like that, just a private one for you to see, because I appreciate your help. So thank you very much indeed, and have a good evening.
Okay, you
Sorry.
too.
Yeah.
Contact me anytime you want.
Thank you. Likewise.
Okay,
Thank you very much indeed. Bye bye.
bye.